guys, this is Alicia with Good Morning Sunshine. So today we had exam 3 this morning. It went better than all my other exams, so I was very excited about that. And then we had 3 lectures this afternoon, which I'm going to go over real fast. We had Aviculture, we had Nutrition 1 lecture, and then we talked about chickens. So I'm going to start with Aviculture. So this basically, he just had slides and we had to really type what he was saying because all his slides were just pictures, so all the information he was talking about we had to type down. So I'm just going to read you the notes that I took on it, and yeah. So fully integrated operations, they basically do everything. So this is about commercial poultry, like what they do, how they go from like the feed mill to the breeders to the hatchery to the grow out to processing to actual retail stores. So basically, the fully integrated operations, they do everything. You have the feed mill, and then everything else is within 60 miles of the feed mill. This is due to the transportation of feed, and it costs more for transportation to go further distances. So that made sense. And then we have primary breeders. They have their own primary stock. They have a grandparent or parent stock. They manipulate genetics to optimize performance of the bird, and then these are also far away from the mill. They're not within that 60-mile distance, and this is due to biosecurity. They sell genetic stock to the breeder farms that have the traits that they manipulated for, and then they go to hatchery, which is contract growing operations, and then they go to the grow out, and then from there they go to the market for processing and either sold or slaughtered. And then further processing is the birds are made into food that we eat today, and then they go to retail. So they also have feedstuffs that we need to know. That's either corn or soy, and they come from all over the country. And then we have poultry feeds form 70% cost of production. So basically what these farms have, 70% goes to the amount or the cost of food that they're feeding their chickens. So that's 70% cost. So they have to make profit. So the FCR, which is the feed conversion ratio, it's pounds of feed for pounds of meat. So higher feed conversion is that good or bad? It's bad. So lower feed conservation ratio is better. So then they have different kinds of foods. They have the pellet, which is they heat treat it. So they basically make the pellet sterilized, and this increases protein levels. And then they have the crumble. That's the crumble of the pellet, and then from there they have scratch. Scratch has grains. It has whole grains. And we're trying to get away from that though. And then they have the mash, which is the smaller version of the crumble. So it goes pellet, crumble, and then mash. And then I can show you here. And then we got into broiler chickens. So broiler breeders, of how they live, they have a nipple drinker, which is how they get their water. They live in nest boxes. They have mobility in their houses. Chickens are indeterminate layers, and they also have to have a particular amount of light in order to lay, so that the light is what brings them into reproduction. So for every one rooster, they usually have 8 to 10 hens. Females can hold sperm almost up to 10 days, and the eggs are collected mechanically, and then they will go to a hatchery and be incubated. They have forced ventilated houses, which have fans which create negative pressure and brings air through the side vents, and it's also good for circulation, so they have good quality clean air. They usually have about 35,000 birds. It sounds like a lot, but everything like the food and water are given mechanically, and chickens' genetics are basically the same. Chickens are attracted to the red color, so that's why they have red nipple drinkers. But birds can also be cannibalistic due to blood being red. So if a chicken gets hurt and they see blood, that can mean attacking and eating. So a young broiler chicken are 32 days. Then they have a broiler chicken, which is 37 to 45 days old. And then they have roosters, which are 77 days. And then we got into turkeys. The male bird is so big that they cannot naturally breed, so they do artificial insemination with these. They have a male barn and a female barn separately. They have nest boxes and have a unique design for the nest box because when turkeys lay eggs, they like to sit on their own eggs and knock it off, so they have a system of where a paddle boots them off the egg, so they can't do that. So I thought that was really funny. A young turkey is called a poult. So they have light hens, which are 14 pounds, and that's 12 to 14 weeks old. And then they have heavy hens, which are 14 to 16 weeks old at 20 pounds. And then they have toms, which are 16 to 20 weeks old at 40 pounds. They're trying to get rid of toms, though. So then we have table egg chicken layers. They're pollock, which is an immature female chicken. They are moved to laying facilities, and eggs are then spread out on a conveyor belt to choose which one are being put into boxes, basically. Then they have alternative commercial systems. They have dust baths and nest boxes. It's a mechanized system still, and it's easier to limit salmonella. And then they have cage-free commercial facilities. They have so these chickens have the opportunity to leave the nesting box, and these eggs are more expensive. They aren't safer, but they aren't safer than enriched caging. So then they have free range and range reared housing. Free range is housed where the birds have access to a sun porch. They're taken inside at night. And then they have range reared, which you would pay more for this, so they're out during the day and inside at night, same as free range, but they're allowed to graze on areas, which limits parasites, and they can move the ranger that they're in. So here's free range and range reared. And then they have small and hobby flock poultry production, so they have a fixed coop and a movable coop. So fixed is just in place, which you see at like houses and stuff where they're in a fixed area. But then they have movable, and that's for, again, parasite control. So then they have game fowl, which are fighting birds, you guys should know. It's not illegal to raise them, but it's illegal to fight them. And then we have bonding and breeding. Some chickens or birds bond for a season or for life. Pet birds or clutches are much smaller. They have different nest types when they're at home, so the nest boxes come in a variety of sizes and shapes depending on the species preference and specific husbandry issues, so they can all look different. But you want to make it look like they're actually at a home. Nutrition, you would feed your home birds with pellet with fresh fruits and vegetables. They have special formulated pelleted flake rations. They have raw fruit, raw and cooked vegetables, dried fruit, and seed mixes. But caution, some things can be toxic, like avocados and raisins, fruit pits and seeds, therefore always check before feeding. A solely seed diet makes them actually sick because their exercise level is low. And then we got into hand feeding and weaning. Oh, and different cages. So you don't want to put also too many toys in the cages, you want to be practical. And then we got into pecking order, so the position and height determine dominance. So you see the birds on the telephone post, so whoever's on the very top, they're next in the pecking order. And then wing and nail trimming, he said we'll get into it later, but yeah. So then that was the end of our aviculture lecture. So then we got into our first nutrition lecture. So the vital assessment is temperature, pulse, respiratory rate, and pain assessment, and nutritional assessment. Nutritional assessment assesses the patient's access to current diet. You would want to assess the patient, assess their current diet, and then adjust and then reevaluate. You want to make accurate assessment of body weight with calibrated scales may be used in a clinical setting and are practical for most small animal patients. However, whether you don't have a scale, you would use a weight tape. Body weight is measured by placing the weight tape around the heart girth. Weight tape measurement won't be as accurate as a scale, but you'll get the heart girth circumference, and that can be influenced by the conformation and the gut feel. Regardless, weight tapes are adequate when you don't have a scale and are good for monitoring trends. Not all weight tapes are created equal. Weights can vary 25 to 100 pounds between tapes, so when monitoring trends, use the same weight tape. Furthermore, precision may be enhanced with the same person who collects the serial measurements each time. If a species-specific weight tape is not available, a tape measure may be used. The body weight may be estimated by measuring the heart girth, that being the chest circumference, and the body length in inches. For cattle, body length should be measured as the length from the point of the shoulder to the point of the rump, just below the tail head. Body weight in pounds may be calculated as heart girth times body length, divided by 300. And then for pigs, body length should be measured as the length from the base of the ears to the base of the tail. The body weight pounds may be calculated as the heart girth times 2 times the body length divided by 400. And you should be identified ways to measure body weight in veterinary patients. And then we have body condition scores, which are different depending on the species. It's subjective, it's a visual tactile of fat mass and lean mass, and indicates whether dietary energy calories are appropriate. Body condition scoring is again a subjective assessment of body mass, particularly fat mass. So body condition score tells us how well the patient's energy required is being met. If the body condition score is less than 5 out of 9, then too many calories are being consumed. If the body condition score is 4 out of 9 or 5 out of 9, then too few calories have been consumed relative to the need. You have to be able to assign a body condition score using species appropriate charts. So we'll get into each chart. So the dog and cat are on a 9-point scale. The target for a dog is 4 to 5. Target for a cat is 5. You would assess the ribs, the waist, and the abdominal tuck. Also the abdominal fat pads in cats, you'll want to see if they're skin or they're actually fat. And then horses have a 9-point scale. Their target is between 4 and 6 for ideal, but 5 out of 9 is a good goal for most horses. You're going to assess the crest of the neck, the withers, behind the shoulder, over the ribs, along the back, and the tail hen region. In beef bovine, it's a 9-point scale. The target is 5 to 6. You're going to assess their brisket, their ribs, their back, their hooks, their fins, and their tail head. And then you have dairy bovine. That's just a 5-point scale because they're usually much slimmer than beef. But they're in 0.25 increments instead of the usual 1 increment. Their target, 2.5 during growth, 3 during breeding, and 3.25 to 3.5 at calving. Very thin is 1 out of 5. A higher risk of ptosis is greater than 3.5, and then very fat is 5 out of 5. So you're going to assess the prominence agulatory of hooks, the pins, the thorough joint, the backbone, the tail head, to see if it's hollow or not, and the short ribs. The pigs are on a 5-point scale. Their target is 3 for production and 2.5 to 3 for pet. So life stages in general, small animals are fed based on a totally daily energy goal. Conversely, large animal patients are fed based on a totally daily dry matter intake goal. Nutrition requirements are dependent on species, gender, life stage, and work. Specific nutrient requirements will be covered in subsequent contact times in sessions. Water and energy, macronutrient requirements. So health parameters, healthy, good appetite, acting like their cells, fecal character, coat quality, presence or absence of the GI, endocrine, or other diseases. Appetite is a good general indicator of overall wellness. The more you ask, the more you can pick up on subtle changes. So energy and nutrient requirements, more about energy requirements in the next lecture, so we didn't get too much into that, but nutrient requirement may be expressed as absolute amount, 40 grams of protein per day. Diet concentration on dry matter basis as 20% crude protein. Diet concentration on caloric basis is 80 grams of crude protein per mcal. So assess the diet and rations. Always collect information about the current diet, like I said in the beginning, and their diet history. So again, taking a diet history includes water, food brand, formula, and amount, treats and table scraps and amount. You want to limit your closed-ended questions when talking to the client, yes and no, and why and what. Ask open-ended questions like describe, walk me through. Pets are often fed commercial foods. How you ask about the diet history will likely influence the quality of information you obtain from the client, so avoid yes or no questions. So again, the assess of the large animal diet and ration are basically the same as what I talked about in everything we feed the animal, but ration is more commonly used in large animal contexts. So assess the feeding management. How an animal is fed is important as to what the animals feed. Herbivores should have access to the food majority of the day. However, omnivores and carnivores can adapt to 1 to 2 meals per day. So small animal feeding management. Feeding by weight is more precise. How is the food measured? Is it a cup, a flake, or a scoop? Often food fed is measured by volume, but not all volume measures have a standard meaning. Furthermore, do all feeds of equal volume weigh the same? No, they do not. Who is feeding the animal? Are there multiple people to get on the same page? How is the food presented to this animal? Feeding systems may help reduce feed waste. Food may be presented in ways to promote mental stimulation. That would be food toys and food puzzles and food bowls. Food toys are a great way to provide environmental enrichment, slow intake, and increase activity. Then we have house feeding management. Feeding by weight is better again than feeding by volume. Meal size and frequency. Hay waste higher when feeding on pasture without a feeder. When feeding hay out of pasture, hay waste may be reduced by using a hay feeder, some more than others. A horse owner may feed their horse grain using a scoop, but is it a 2-pound scoop or a 3-pound scoop? So then you want to get ask like what kind of cup they're using. And then we have food animal feeding management, bunk space management. Does everyone have equal access when feeding in a group? These are cows like fed in their thing. And then you want to monitor while they're feeding. Is there competition? So again, feeding management, environment influence food intake. Generally, food intake increases in the cold, decreases in the heat. Diurnal food consumption patterns may be by species. Are animals fed as a group? If so, the social dynamics of the group must be considered to ensure that the dominant animal isn't overeating and the non-dominant animals have adequate food access. Climate. Generally, feed intake is negatively correlated with temperature. In bad conditions, is enough food easily available, like snow covering food or freezing water. Distance from water to feed and vitamin mineral supplementation. So is the current diet and feeding management appropriate? If so, no. It needs to be adjusted and change is needed. If not, adjust. Like I said, biocondition score is determined if current daily energy calories is adequate, inadequate, or excessive. So that was the end of that lecture. And then we got into immunology. So immunology introduction, infection leads to disease, then there are 2 outcomes. You either recover from the disease or death. If disease is re-exposed, they don't get the disease again, become resistant. So important immunological milestones. People have recovered from the disease, did not develop the disease again, therefore resistant. Early vaccination in humans and animals. Edward Jenner, he figured out the concept of protection by related diseases. He's the one who started the concept of vaccinations. And then we have Al Pasteur, vaccination live irrelevant, concept germs can cause the disease. So he's the one who did experiments where he took a disease, he's like the disease or the infection is what's causing the disease, not some bad spirit. So he discovered that putting the disease in I think it was chickens, they all died. So, and then Salmon, this has to do with dry bacteria or killed bacteria for vaccinations. And then we have E. Metchnikoff, which demonstrated the existence of phagocytes. This was the first demonstration of part of the innate immune system. So big cells eat germs, macrophage phagocytes. And then we have Owen, Madar, and Burnett. Their concept was the immune system tolerates its own tissues, so antigens. So basically, he just defined what tolerance meant. And then we have Rowett and Donark in humans. Their concept was immune system is capable of attacking itself, autoimmunity, break intolerance. And then Mosman and Kaufman, their concepts identified cytokines as chemical messengers, classified cells based on the type of cytokines. And then we have Butler, Hoffman, and Steinem. Their concept was the role of innate immune cells. They were awarded the Nobel Prize in 2011. So we have key terminologies. We have the antigen, which is the substance, a foreign substance which provokes immune response. And then we have the immunity, the state of protection from diseases, has non-specific and specific component. So the specific component includes antibody, B cells, mediated humoral, and T cell mediated cellular. Serum is a good source of antibodies, and then plasma is unclotted blood. After centrifugation, the clear fluid is the plasma, and it's rich in antibodies. We have humoral immunity, specialized type of cells called B lymphocytes. B cells produce and release antibodies, the Y-shaped proteins in the humors, the blood in the lymph. This type of immunity is called humoral immunity. And then we have antigen, again being the substance form which provokes immune responses. There are infinite amount of antigens. So then we have specificity, which are antibodies so produced will specifically combine with or bind to the substance which induced their formation. We have primary immune response and secondary immune response. Primary immune response, there's a long lag phase to a new foreign substance. You won't see the antibodies in your blood systems until after this phase. So it takes them a long time in order to make antibodies, but then they end up dying off. But the few cells that are left, the few antibodies that are left, are stored as memory cells. So then the secondary immune response, this is the concept of booster shots. They have a short lag phase with high levels of antibodies because the body has these antibodies stored as memory cells. So the immune system has already recognized them. So when the disease hits again, they know how to respond. And then we have active immunity, which the mother gets exposed to the infection. And then we have passive immunity, when the antibodies are transferred from the mother to the newborn. Thus, the newborn will have the resistance even though the newborn hasn't had the disease. So then we talked about taking a tissue from a dog and put it into a graft, how the graft would therefore be rejected. So again, this is the same concept. The first set will take a while to reject because it hasn't seen this disease yet, or graft yet, I guess. And then the second graft, the rejection is very fast because it's already seen this graft and knows to reject it. And then we have cell-mediated immunity, which means immunity mediated by cells is called cell-mediated immunity. These cells are called T lymphocytes or T cells. T cells also show specificity. Note that T cell mediated immunity is not mediated by antibody-producing B cells. Therefore, this type of immunity cannot be transferred by serum, but rather by T cells. Then we have tolerance, self versus non-self. If a foreign substance like bacteria or unrelated tissue is administered, then there is an induction of specific immune response. However, if an animal's own tissue, self tissue, is administered, then there's no immune response. This is by a mechanism called tolerance. A normal immune system will respond to foreign but not self antigens. So that was it for our first immunology lecture. Sorry that was a lot and I was talking really fast. I just wanted to get this done because I'm tired. It's my free night, but it's already almost 9 o'clock. But I love you guys and I thank you guys for watching.